Hello everybody and welcome to History Bite number 202, dated March 4th, 2021. I'm Walter, your mobile historian and blue-collar scholar. This history/law bite is entitled United States versus the Amistad, 40 U.S. 518, 1841. Most of you have probably heard of this landmark case, though perhaps not in this form. You may recall that the events surrounding this famous lawsuit were made into a movie in 1997, directed by Steven Spielberg, known as Amistad. You know, it featured high-name actors such as Morgan Freeman, Sir Anthony Hopkins, Matthew McConaughey, and many others. You know, it was very, very awesome and historically accurate movie, okay? And it brought, to life just how terrible the slave trade was, all right? And just how easily even free Africans could lose their freedom and be misrepresented as slaves. So, in this case, U.S. versus the Amistad, it begins in June of 1839 when the Amistad, a Spanish vessel, set sail from Havana, Cuba, all right, with its captain, crew, two notable property owners, Senors Ruiz and Montez, as well as a cargo of 53 unlawfully captured Africans, all right? Having left Havana, right, not too much longer into their voyage, all right, the Africans revolted. All right, and in the process of their revolt, they killed the captain and other members of the crew, but left Ruiz and Montez alive, okay? They also left others alive to obviously help the maintenance of the ship itself and, demanded that Ruiz and Montez steer the ship back to Africa so that they could be returned to their homeland, quite obviously. So during the day, the ship was headed east. In the night, it was turned around, heading the opposite direction, all right? So it was going in a zigzag format, all up and down, essentially the American coast, where it was sighted several times, until eventually provisions got very low, all right? And thankfully for the ship, when it finally did decide to drop anchor near the American coast, they dropped anchor at the very end of Long Island in New York, where they went to, where the Africans and others on board went to find provisions. So while there, all right, the ship was discovered by Captain Thomas Gedney, who was in command of a U.S. frigate patrolling the coast, and as such, he took the Amistad and all members on board under arrest, essentially, and transported them to Connecticut, where technically the institution of slavery was still legal, though it would be eradicated only a few years after this case. He took them to Connecticut, hoping to be awarded everything that was on the ship, including its cargo, the Africans. However, that was not to be, as we would see later on, all right? So once in Connecticut, all right, the Africans would later be charged with murder and piracy, having mutinied on the ship and killed the captain. The court, however, ruled that it lacked any jurisdiction over this case because A, the matter happened in international waters, and B, it happened upon a Spanish ship. In no way did an American court have any type of criminal jurisdiction over this case. So the criminal suit would be dismissed. So that being said, afterwards, civil aspect of this case came into being, where many parties, including the Spanish government, Senors Ruiz and Montez, Captain Gedney, and others, would file a suit in the U.S. District Court seeking claims with respect to the Amistad and its crew. All right. At this point in the juncture, the Africans would be represented by attorney Roger Baldwin, who of course was depicted by Matthew McConaughey in the movie Amistad. All right. Baldwin would present the case for the Africans once the matter went to court. All right. It did, in fact, go to court, for the record, in the beginning of January 1840. Okay. And the claims were presented on all sides. The Spanish government requested that the ship and the cargo be returned as property of Spain. All right. Ruiz and Montes returned that their slaves be returned, demanded that their slaves be returned to them. Okay. Others made various claims. Captain Gedney wanted the entire ship and its cargo. All right. And of course, on the opposite side, we see Baldwin make the argument on behalf of the Africans, quite simply, that it was unlawful to return them to Spain, Ruiz or Montes, or anybody else, because they were legitimately free people who were unlawfully captured in violation of existing laws between Spain, Great Britain, all right, and other parties, prohibiting the slave trade altogether, all right? So their capture was unlawful and therefore illegitimate. It was an interesting mess, with all due respect. President of the United States, Martin Van Buren, who of course was running for re-election in this year, 1840, intervened in his own way on behalf of the Spanish, declaring that, once a favorable district court decision was handed down, he would immediately order that the Africans be transported back to Cuba, going about their business, all right, and all would be honky-dory, all right. So with that in mind, essentially, Van Buren wasn't even going to allow the appeals process to happen, all right. But unfortunately for him, it did not turn out that way, all right. In January of 1840, the district court ruled in favor of the Africans, and the argument put forth by Roger Baldwin, all right. The district court entirely threw out the claims of the Spanish government as well as Senors Ruiz and Montes, all right. It did order that the Africans be delivered to the President of the United States and in turn be transported back to Africa. Lieutenant Gedney was also awarded 1/3 of the property on board the Amistad vessel. All right. So obviously, with that in mind, the U.S. government was a little pissed off at the district court, with that, they appealed to the U.S. Circuit Court for the District of Connecticut, which affirmed the holding of the district court in full. All right. Again, not to be dissuaded, the U.S. government then appealed to the Supreme Court of the United States. All right. At this point, all right, we see John Quincy Adams, former President of the United States of America and incumbent U.S. Congressman, join the legal team for the Africans, all right, alongside Baldwin, all right, and these two present a formidable case to the Supreme Court with respect to freedom for the Africans, all right. So on the U.S. government side, we see Attorney General Henry Gilpin present the argument to the court that the papers submitted by the Spanish government were fully legitimate and should not be second-guessed or undermined by the Supreme Court, that the Spanish government would never act in bad faith in submitting falsified documentation regarding the status of the Africans. After all, the Spanish government's documents stated that these Africans were slaves, and after all, since they are a legitimate government, why would they tell any lies? This is essentially the argument put forth by the U.S. Attorney General. All right. The documents, as they are put forth by a government, are therefore perfectly legitimate. Okay. Mr. Gilpin spoke for about 2 hours with this argument. All right. And then the torch was passed to Baldwin. All right. On side of the Africans. Baldwin emphasized the fact that the Spanish were essentially manipulating the situation and the court itself to return the Africans to them so that they could put them into slavery, something that they had not previously been in. These Africans were entirely free. They were never captives. All right. Baldwin himself spoke for about 4 hours on this subject. Enter then John Quincy Adams, all right, as played by the phenomenal actor Sir Anthony Hopkins in the movie Amistad. Adams would speak over the course of several days, all right, concluding his argument on the 1st of March. Adams argued substantially on the points that none of America's treaties with Spain applied to this case, as these people were not legitimate property, which is what America's commercial treaties with Spain were essentially governing. These were free people, not property. So the Adams-Onis Treaty, all right, nor the Pinckney Treaty applied here. Adams also made great references to freedom and morality, as well as how the President of the United States, Van Buren, had overstepped his boundaries in attempting to undermine the outcome of this case. All right? So the Attorney General would then take the remainder of the time to close his argument. All right? So the Supreme Court would rule on March the 9th, 1841, in favor of the Africans. The essential issue that the justices had to decide was whether or not these Africans were free people or the legitimate property of Ruiz or Montes, or, to a lesser extent, the Spanish government. All right? The court had affirmatively ruled that they were free. Quite simply put, Spain had outlawed the slave trade in its dominions, the international slave trade in general. Therefore, the kidnapping and transport of these Africans was illegal, no matter how you cut the cake. All right? These Africans were not slaves. They were legitimately free people who were captured from their homeland and taken prisoner, all right, on a previous ship and then on the Amistad, all right? United States of America was obligated to respect the rights of these free Africans on the same level as they would respect the rights of a Spanish subject, all right, or subjects, in this case, Ruiz and Montes, all right? The rights and freedoms of the Africans trumped any Spanish-American treaties protecting property rights, all right? The ship arrived in American waters under the authority of the free Africans, okay? Therefore, they did not need to be turned over to the President of the United States to be transported back to Africa, but only to be declared free, all right, which is exactly what the court did. The opinion of the court essentially declared the Africans free, and it did not require that the government transport them back to Africa. However, that is something that would be done by way of private funds the following year. All right. For the record, Justice Henry Baldwin dissented from Story's decision. All right. Story wrote the opinion of the court. And Justice Philip Barber died during the course of arguments in this case. All right. So the legacy of this case, quite simply what happened after, was after the Africans were declared free, they remained here in Connecticut. And following year, through funds raised by abolitionists, they were transported back to Africa, specifically Sierra Leone. All right. And this case was certainly a very important victory for Africans and people of color in general who had unlawfully been taken in violation of laws prohibiting the slave trade. Okay, this, along with Prigg versus Pennsylvania and Dred Scott, were the most important cases decided by the U.S. Supreme Court on the subject of slavery before the American Civil War. All right, so that is United States versus the Amistad, with a judgment by the Supreme Court of the United States, written by Justice Joseph Story, in favor of the Africans, declaring them free, having been illegally captured in violation of international law, laws prohibiting the slave trade. All right, and thus the Africans had every right to obtain their freedom from their captors. All right, so U.S. versus Amistad, 40 U.S. 518, 1841. Any questions or controversies, leave them down below. I'll be happy to answer them for you. If you have not subscribed to my page, please do so now. I would greatly appreciate it. Hope you learned a thing or two from this video. If you would like to donate financially to my channel, by all means, there are links provided for you to do that. Thank you again. Your support is appreciated more than you will ever know. Take care, stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you at the next bite. Peace.